words, can you tell me what happened this past Saturday?
Well, I was sitting home with my wife here, and we were actually working on some of our campaign material for this electoral cycle. And I received a call from a, excuse me, a friend of mine, Kurt Fabella, and he notified me that my opponent, Matt Lopresti, was at the corner of Hanakahi and Fort Weaver, and he had been moving my signs. So I jumped in my truck and I drove down there. So I saw Mr. Lopresti on the left-hand side of the street, on the corner of Hanakahi and Fort Weaver. So I got out and I approached him and I asked him, Matt, what's going on? And he immediately got into the defense mode and said, leave me alone, you're stalking me. If you keep harassing me, I'm going to call the police. And I simply asked him, what are you doing? My signs are over there. You have your signs right on top of my signs where they used to be. So, I mean, it's obvious that it was moved. But he broke into a tirade and started threatening me, saying that, you know, I'm going to put you back into prison where you belong. You deserve to be incarcerated, on and on and on and on. So I kept my distance from Mr. Lopresti, and as I was walking away from him towards the front of a vehicle that was situated on the corner of Hanakahi, in front of the neighbor's house, he positioned himself in front of the vehicle. So I walked around the back where I took a photo of him waving at me. So he was smug enough to wave at me. And a comment he made walking away as he left to go to his car was, oh my gosh, my signs are touching your signs. And I said, man, you're not supposed to touch my signs. You're not supposed to do anything to it. And then he reiterated again and he said, well, I'm going to put you back where you belong in prison. You're harassing me, you're stalking me. And then when I came home, you know, I was kind of frazzled, so I came home and we kind of shook that off. My wife and I and my children, we had dinner. And within several hours after the ordeal, there was a Facebook message that came out that was shared with me, where Matt had gone on a rampage sharing that he was almost physically assaulted by a violent criminal. And so in that Facebook rant, and it went on and on and on to say that I have feared for my life, and I have constantly had to try and fight my way away from this gentleman. This guy is I don't know the exact words, but it was pretty much along the lines of, he is a violent, felonious criminal with 20-year history, and I have constantly in fear of my life, or I don't know the exact words. But I was appalled. I said, well, what's going on? This isn't right. This is not what happened. And so shortly thereafter, I see the police officer appear at my door. And so he appeared because Mr. Lopresti had charged me with harassment. So he filed a police report against me. So we did the same. I filed a police report against Mr. Lopresti for harassment. But in reality, it was nothing more than just a very casual altercation. And I had hoped that that gentleman would have been as polite as possible, would have held his integrity and just talked to me. Because I didn't go there to harass anybody. I went there just to ask him a simple question: why did you touch and remove my signs?
Yeah, that was actually going to be a question I had. Why did you feel the need to go down there?
Well, because first and foremost, we're in a campaign cycle. And anytime someone removes or replaces or alters your signs, it's illegal, first of all. From a campaign standpoint, it's illegal. You cannot touch anyone else's signs. And because of the contention that has existed with Mr. Lopresti and myself since 2014, the last time we ran against each other, I'm always wary whenever he's anywhere near anything that has to do with myself, my family, our community, or our friends. So again, I wouldn't go there again if I had the choice or the chance, because I have no ill will against this individual, and I wish him all the best. But I do expect, common courtesy when it comes to running a race, and I never received that from Mr. Lopresti.
So you went down there to protect your signs?
Yes, to look and to see firsthand if what was being told to me over the phone was correct. So when I went down there, I witnessed firsthand that my signs were moved, and there were Mr. Lopresti's signs, replacing an area that my signs had once occupied.
So when you came back and had dinner with your wife, you kind of thought, that didn't really go well, but you didn't at all feel that you threatened him or almost assaulted him. So what was your thoughts when you saw his Facebook post calling you, I was nearly assaulted by a violent felon, Bryan Jeremiah? What was your thoughts when you read that?
Well, I thought, as I had thought for the past several years since 2014, here we go again. Now we have a standing state representative who's going to use his authority in a negative way to shed negative light on my campaign as a resident of Eva Beach, which he has done several times before. I'm not going to get into past electoral cycle or 2014 election, but we have a history where whatever I say is always construed from Matt LaPresti's standpoint as a violent threat, when in fact it is not. So what we set out to do this time was actually document and prove once and for all that we're not the ones who are the violent individuals, and we are not the ones who are crying foul. It is, in fact, it is Representative Matt LaPresti. And as we can clearly see in the photos, we are not stalking him, we are not harassing him, no one is bothering him, but yet he makes these sensational statements which really hurt us, and it hurts our campaign efforts, as all we want to do is just run a clean race. So that's one of the reasons why we ran down there in the first place, because personally I'm tired, I'm weary from having to deal with Representative LaPresti. I think his conduct is unprofessional, and I've always just wanted to deal as two men running an equal race looking for the same seat and nothing more. I have never, ever, and there's not a single shred of evidence to speak to the contrary, ever spoke against this man, ever harassed this man, ever bothered this man, ever deliberately seeked out this man for anything other than to just share the truth with our community.
Why did you feel the need to run against him in the first place?
Well, we were both in a contentious race in 2014. The standing incumbent at that time was Rita Cabanero. So Rita is a great individual, and as with every politician, there's times when the community doesn't necessarily agree with everything that person is doing, or that they stand for their community in the right light. So Matt ran as a Democrat, I ran as a Republican. Early on during that race, he knelt down beside me at one of the neighborhood boards and he extended his hand. He said, "Let's run a clean race." And I agreed with him. I shook his hand. And unfortunately, it was anything but. He proceeded to go door to door. And on every door that he could knock on, including those that were Republicans, he said, "I don't know who you folks are and how you guys vote, but I can tell you this. My opponent is a criminal with a 20-year history of violent crimes," on and on and on. I mean, everyone that would listen to him. And there were people in the audience that told me that after the fact, that were part of the neighborhood board meetings. So that's kind of what, drove things in this direction. The reason I ran was because, to me, the idea of doing nothing in this tumultuous environment of politics was unacceptable. Because there's so many things that are wrong with what's going on in our country. Now, you have good Democrats, bad Democrats, good Republicans, and bad. But for us, it's all about the people. It's not about the politics. We're not running because we're looking for a seat down at the state capitol, but we truly believe that we represent the interests of our community, and that's the reason why we ran. That's the only reason why we ran, and that's the same reason why we're running again this time.
You had mentioned, earlier, and it's also in the email, that you believe that Campbell High School remains underfunded, overcrowded. That's something that you are committed to, or I guess what kind of changes do you hope to, things do you hope to change if you had office?
Well, there's a lot of problems. But there's problems at a state level, and there's also problems at a community level. So for me, first and foremost, as a representative, no matter what part of the state you come from or what district you may serve, it's really about the people in your community that you serve first. It's not really about, it's not about the politics, and it's not about the party. It's really about the people that you swore to serve. So when you take that oath, you need to remember the 13,000 people that live in Eva Beach and their voice needs to be heard. So when we're talking about 3,100 students in a school that normally should have 14 to 1,500, that's severely overcrowded. When we're talking about traffic where people have to leave at 4 o'clock in the morning just to get to work at 7, that's a really expeditious problem. When we talk about the homelessness, we talk about the beach problem, there's so many problems just within our community. And as a representative, I would expect that you would stand up and represent your community. Even if it meant that you'd be standing in contrast to your party's wishes. Meaning that if they wanted you to be quiet, you would still stand and say, I appreciate that and I represent and respect my party, but it's more important that I represent my community than the party. And that Representative McCrestey did not. In every single instance, he voted against. $40 million was on the table. We got nothing. But then there was a handout that said, well, here's $40 million for a projected high school in Ho'opili in an area that's yet to be announced and not even on the table yet. So, I mean, we have suffered, this community has suffered for many, many years, past, present, and future. And the kids next year, what do we tell them? What do we tell the high school kids? What do we tell the children that are going to this new $18 million wing that's going to be built for Eva Mackay Middle School, where they go to high school? Because Campbell High School is already overcrowded, and so is Kapolei. There is no relief. So we keep spinning the bottle in the name of, progress, but what happens is it all kind of filters into a party environment. So it's Democrat against Republican, Republican against Democrat. And all we want to do is we want to try and find a happy medium where we can all work together and compromise and find consensus so that at least we're working towards the betterment of our community and not the party. I'm sorry, that was a long-winded approach.
I guess, to sum it all up, you don't think that he's the right one for the job, or he's doing a good job?
I think Matt McCrestey's a great guy. He's probably a great teacher of ethics, and I really have nothing negative to say about him other than, what has transpired between he and I. I just don't believe that he is the best fit as a representative for this community.
I'm not sure if you know, he just told us today that he filed a TRO. Were you aware of that?
So did we. We also filed a temporary restraining order. But based on the rules of harassment, it was denied because the judge said that it didn't meet the parameters of harassment. So I understood that as being fair. And I will tell you this, and anyone out there that's listening, the reason why we filed that, because he had threatened to file a TRO against us. So we did the same. So if there is anything to the contrary based on what we had shared today and all the evidence that has been forthcoming, then there's something seriously wrong with our judicial system.
Yeah, are you fearing that this campaign is more about Jeremiah against the Presti and not really focus on the right things? Is that a fear?
Well, it's not necessarily a fear; it's a concern. Because I think it's not about our personalities. It's not personal. I have nothing against Matt, and I'm not coming after Matt. But I have this feeling like he feels that it's his seat and it's his right, and he deserves to be there. How dare I even attempt to run against him? Because I have the feeling that in his mind's eye, he looks at us as if we're less than or beneath him. And because I have a colorful past, and so does he. Everyone has something in their closet, but that is not the reason why we're here. We're here because we want to represent our community.
What do you want to tell community members who see this story and, what would you want to tell them?
Well, I want to say to our community, the most important thing in finding the representative that best fits your needs is to look for the one that best answers the questions that you have, and not special interests. Because there's a lot of concerns that exist in this community, and a lot of people feel that their voices are not being heard. And both in the older neighborhoods as well as in newer neighborhoods. We now live in a very affluent Eva Beach. This is a lot different than older Eva Beach, say 10, 20 years ago. So we have a very mixed melting pot of people here. Some people here in the military, people here working for the rail, there's people here that moved here to retire, and then you have the older people that live in the front and back of Eva Beach. And everyone deserves their voice to be heard. So it really should never be about the special interests that exist in that melting pot that they call the capital. It really should be about the people in Eva Beach. And so, to the residents here, I would say, let the true reason of what you're looking for in a representative come through in your decision making.
That's all my questions, unless you had anything else you want to say that I didn't ask?
No. thank you. I appreciate you folks taking the time to sit here with us, and thank you guys. Thank you very much.
Just chit chat for a second. Just chit
Yeah,
chat.
okay. Okay. He actually sent he sent me some pictures of why he cuts the signs. I don't know. Were you aware that he, kind of cuts the hedges around the fence? Did you know that?
That has nothing to do with anything.
Okay.
That's, to be honest with you, that's smoke and mirrors. That's typical Representative LaPresti trying to deflect. Right now he's in an uncomfortable position, and I can understand that because he's put us in several uncomfortable and uncompromising positions many times over the past several years. So the fact that he's playing defense right now is not surprising to me. In 2014, we have an actual police. We had filed a police report because he tried to attack my wife.